Good afternoon and warm welcome to all the participants for this session 2.1 on regional energy integration. First of all, I thank ADB and ACEF partners for inviting me to moderate this important panel. Also compliment them for this thematic track on regional power trade and market integration. There are 4 sessions in this track. The first one is this particular one on regional energy planning and grid integration. The second session on building regional infrastructure for seamless power trade will follow after this from 4 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. today. And the third session is on enhancing regulatory and policy framework for power trade, which is scheduled on 5th June, 2 o'clock to 3:30. And the last session on this thematic track is on advancing renewable energy integration, which will be from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on 5th of June. So now this is very well designed program, this particular thematic tracks, and also they have managed to assemble the real expert with hands-on experience from different parts of the globe. So let us start on with this first session on energy planning. For over a century, we managed power system without much of difficulties because most of the things were predictable, except some vagaries of the weather. So it was a straightforward, although power system operators never knew when a customer will switch on or switch off his appliances or equipment, but they knew how to manage that because the power plants, the generation plants were dispatchable. They generated the electricity which were dispatchable. And we also found out a method of spinning reserve. So all the machines which are running will run at 90% or 75 or 80% efficiency. And whenever there is a load, you could increase that to 90% to 100%. Some machines could go even above 100%. So that spinning reserve, which in different geography, 5% to 10%, which we maintained, helped the power system operators for over a century to manage the grid according to the changing demand of the customers. And that was so easy, mainly because the generation was from limited number of power plants. In a typical large country, like even India, or you take Europe or North America, there were only few hundred points of power injection, few hundred power plants which generated and injected electricity into the grid, which millions of people drew it. But last 2 decades, particularly last 10 years, it has completely changed. There are millions and millions of points of power injection in every major region or grid. And these are, as you heard in the morning, 80% of the new generation plant added in 2024 were renewable. And majority of it is connected in medium voltage and low voltage network, which was never meant for that. The grid as we operate today is designed, engineered, built, and operated for one-way flow of electricity, which today we are witnessing two-way flow of electrons. And the entire operating regime need to change, the planning regime need to change. So resource adequacy, we never bothered about it because, as I said, we had the spinning reserve. So today it is not. There are many days in a year in different geographies where almost 100% of the demand is met from renewables, solar and wind. It's happening in Europe, it's happening in North America, it's happening in Australia, and even in India, many days we have almost 50% of the daytime demand is met from renewables. My name is Rajikumar Pillai. I am the president of India Smart Grid Forum, which is a think tank set up by Government of India in 2011. I also currently chair the Global Smart Energy Federation, which is a federation of smart grid associations from different countries, which was set up by US Department of Energy in 2010. So in this session, we'll be hearing some presentations from 5 experts on different technologies and different projects they have undertaken in different parts of the world. So one of the key learnings in the recent past, the power system operators have learned is that larger the control area, better it is to mitigate the intermittency of renewable sources. Solar and wind, although we have sophisticated tools for predicting weather, but when it comes to the day of operation, intraday mitigation measures can be better managed with larger the control area. So this is a very key learning. From that perspective, the regional interconnections and regional energy planning has assumed importance. We have Mr. Henry Pei, Head of Planning and Economic Studies at the International Atomic Energy Agency based in Vienna. He will be speaking about the Continental Master Plan for Africa. Africa has 5 regional power pools, which is currently being integrated as one continental grid. We have Akbar Dwi Wayuno, research analyst at Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, Energy Center in Jakarta. He'll be talking about the ASEAN power grid and the importance of data sharing framework and how it can be uh, made a full regional interconnection. Out of 18 regional interconnections in ASEAN, 9 of them are built and they are enhancing the capacity and also building the other 9 interconnections. We have Ekaterina Flores, a senior consultant with the DNV. She will be talking about a plan, regional integration of 5 countries in the Central Asian area. This is more for the security of energy, food, and water. And we have Anna Piovaska, she Economic Affairs Officer, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. They will be talking about the model which is prepared for integrated energy. Sorry, we'll be talking about the, oh sorry, she'll be talking about the Central Asian planning. My mistake, apologies. Ekaterina will be talking about the integrated resource and resiliency plan. And we have Thomas Lynch from CTC Global. He'll be talking about new technologies for increasing the capacity of transmission lines with the special conductors. As you know, in North America alone, more than 1,500 gigawatt of solar and wind plants are waiting transmission connection. About 1,000 gigawatt of battery energy storage systems are awaiting transmission connection. But there are special conductors which can almost double the capacity of energy flow in the existing corridors. So I stop here and invite Ekaterina to present on the integrated energy and resiliency plan.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ekaterina Flores, and as said, I will talk about today a quite interesting topic that probably you already heard about, which is all about integrated resource and resilient planning, or as we call it, IRP. So I will start by touching on why this is relevant, why are we talking about this? Then I will move on to an IRP type of framework that could be implemented in the region. And then I finalize the presentation by talking about what are the benefits we see of developing a regional IRP here in APAC. Okay. So, setting the scene. For those who have done power system planning, probably you are very aware that this is a very complex type of exercise due to the long-term horizon that it entails. And at the same time, we need to look at a lot of different drivers that goes into developing a power planning system. So traditional, sorry. So traditionally, the main focus has been always on the supply site and into the grid infrastructure. We just need to make sure that we meet the projected demand at the least cost. However, often this does not include or does not consider the demand side factor that goes into this equation. And nowadays, because the energy landscape has evolved, this way of doing power system planning is not longer enough due to all these new landscape that we see. So when I'm talking about landscapes, what I actually mean? So we see that there is increased electrification because of a population growth, as well as electrification coming from different industries, from the transport industry, for example. Oh, sorry. From the transport industry, as well for, let's say, the space industry, heating, cooling, and so forth. So increase in electrification, we see an uptake in renewable energy. Demand side participation, something that before was not really part of the equation. Of course, there is an increase in risk and uncertainty due to climate change. And also we see policy targets and legal frameworks being adjusted every now and then. So that said, within this new environment, we see that many jurisdictions have adopted integrating type of frameworks, such integrated resource and resilient planning, for example. And the idea with this is to explore a wider range of options that can address all these uncertainties and risks. So IRP primary objective is to develop a comprehensive, resilient, or least regret electricity plan, which kind of addresses both the demand side as well as the supply side resources to meet this future demand. So it's not just about the least cost, but rather the least regret. So before I continue with the framework, I want to provide like a quick kind of introduction and two main concepts that are quite relevant for this topic, and is the resource adequacy and resiliency in IRRP. So when we talk about resource adequacy, is actually the system ability to meet all the levels of demand at the normal circumstances, while at the same time we account for potential unexpected events such generation outages, for example, or fluctuation in the load. Normally, we use metrics in order to assess it based on an established reliability kind of standards. And this could be deterministic, which is kind of the traditional way, as well as a probabilistic type of approaches. And this is something that we commonly do or have done it in resource planning. Now, on the other side, we have resiliency. And this involves preparing for and recovering from unexpected events that it cannot be avoided. These are associated with extreme events of high impact and low probability of occurring. For example, extreme weather type of events or even cyber attacks. And this is an aspect that we haven't really touched on or account for in resource planning. And this is something that an IRP type of approach will take into consideration. So, for an IRP type of framework, we see 6 main components that are quite relevant. So we have planning goals and strategies. So here the idea is that in addition to the least cost, we want to have objectives that consider multiple objectives. So least regret, low risk, environmental type of targets, emission reduction type of targets, and so forth, as well as there are considerations of trade-offs between the cost, the risk, and the emissions. When we talk about approach and methodology, we mainly have three components that we kind of look into. One is the supply side assessment, so pretty much what we traditionally been doing, assessment of conventional as well as renewable type of assets. But also here, another component is the demand forecasting. So here we look at doing a bottom-up type of demand forecasting that will help to increase accuracy compared to a top-down type of approach that is what traditionally we have done. And also consider future demand profiles rather than looking at the peak or the annual average type of demand. And the third kind of component here is integrated planning. So the idea is that we want to look also at demand response, demand management type of initiatives. As I said before, electrification of other sectors should be also included. And when we talk about regional planning, we need to, of course, take into consideration the planning of neighboring countries. Resource adequacy criteria is another one. And then here, what we want to look at is at the probabilistic kind of metrics is what is recommended as an addition to just the reserve margin, which is what traditionally we have done. Another component is the risk and resilient planning. So here it's all about a scenario and sensitivity analysis to be able to assess and potentially mitigate risk and uncertainties that comes from fuel uncertainty and risk, demand side risks, policy risk, and climate risks, for example. Planning, horizon, and iterative process. So here, what we want to is consistency. Consistency in both the duration or the horizon of the power planning itself, as well as how often we do updates of this planning. So updates ideally will be between 2 to 3 years, and then horizon of the power plan, we want it to be at least 15 years, if not longer. And to analyze a key component in the RRP framework, stakeholder engagement and governance. So here the idea is to have a wide range of stakeholders involved, not just government entities, but also the private sector, communities, the academy, as well as experts in the different topics that the RRP touch on. And I see I'm running out of time. So then lastly, all that said, we see that having this type of approach at the regional level, so developing a regional RRP will bring a lot of benefits to the region and those countries that will be involved in it. So very quick one to touch on those. So comprehensive energy planning. So here it will provide a broad overview of the current landscape of the region, while at the same time would outline the pathways to achieve a regional and national energy targets. A proactive problem-solving approach. So it will help to anticipate and prepare for any potential obstacles, while at the same time it will help us to identify areas where our regional cooperation would actually yield a most significant benefit for all. Cost efficiency. So yeah, having an integration of the regional power system will reduce the overall dispatch cost by assessing a larger pool of sources, regeneration type of sources. A stronger transmission investment cases. So regional grid planning from a diverse or varied type of scenarios will enhance the business case for that specific transmission project, which is something that the RRP will bring. Climate resilience. So by having this approach and using this framework, it will facilitate effective management of climate change impacts by incorporating them into the resilient measures, by incorporating resilient measures into the planning itself. Investment and green financing. So having a structured IRRP framework will create a favorable business environment for investors, and therefore it will help to support the expansion of green financial type of practices. And last, an enhanced stability. So these type of initiatives will help to strengthen the region's ability to withstand disruptions from natural disasters, for example, for geopolitical tensions, as well as for market fluctuations. And with that, I finish my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Next, I will invite Thomas.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very pleased, I have to say, and honoured indeed to be invited here to speak to you at the Asian Clean Energy Forum in Manila today. And what I would like to speak about today is the strategically critical role that transmission systems, both today's systems and tomorrow's enhanced and expanded systems, have to play in the energy transition. And later on in this event, you'll hear a lot more about the specific applications, but I want to speak a little bit about the strategy and its relationship to the energy transition. The energy transition, what are we transitioning to? We're transitioning to a net zero position. And this is something that everybody, whether it's governments, lenders, large energy users, utilities, or regulators, it's very important to navigate this transition effectively. So the blue triangle, if I can draw our attention to this first to begin with, everybody, most people in this room will be aware of the blue triangle, which is also known as the energy trilemma, and it's the three S's. And it's got three very important corners, which often don't always balance out. And the reason why I'm speaking about this today is the balancing act is very, very important. So down here on the right, the bottom right, you have sustainability. Sustainability, 90% of the investment in the world today is being into the energy transition is directed at that lower right-hand corner. And it's more particular, it's directed at renewable generation within the sustainability corner. Now that's all very well because we need solar, we need wind, we need biomass, we need all the renewable energies down there. But what's happening is that it causes certain problems. We'll come to those very quickly. So the sustainability end of things, who's concerned about it? It's countries, etc. It's addressing the national determined contributions for carbon, etc. And it's the area that attracts the interests of most of the investors, not all. But what are the issues? The issues are that nearly all renewable energy is intermittent. It's there some of the time, it's not there more of the time. It's also variable. So even when it is there, it may not be at full rated output. And it's also unpredictable, though we heard earlier from Reggie that there's lots of software systems and advanced analytical forecasting that predicts when the wind will blow, will predict when the sun will shine, but it doesn't always get it right. So the big issue we have is to how to turn non-firm energy into dispatchable energy and to make that sustainable corner more secure up in the top right. The security of supply issue, we've seen we've seen the Spanish case recently. We need grid stability. We need to avoid what Ekaterina mentioned earlier was the loss of load probability. We need to make it secure. And there are various tools which can make that secure, and I'll come to those very, very briefly in a moment. The final corner and the oft forgotten and neglected corner is social affordability and democratization. So who pays for all this? Is the energy getting to the right people, and is it sufficiently penetrating to everybody? What is the cost, and are there affordability and social mechanisms to protect those who can't necessarily afford it? So who's interested in the energy trilemma? It's normally governments, utilities, regulators, and institutions like Asian Development Bank. Now, the way I often describe the balancing act around the energy trilemma is if you were to tie a great big tractor with a chain onto each of the three corners there, what we're striving for here as system operators, system owners, etc., is to make it balanced. So in other words, you cannot afford too much pull on any one corner, and it's actually happening at the moment on the bottom right. What happens is that in any triangle, it's inherently a fragile shape, and you get fragility, which I've indicated here by these red curves, and fragility occurs, and we need to support the system to ensure that the one corner or another doesn't necessarily implode. So to strengthen that in that fragile shape and that fragile system, there are a number of key tools. There's demand side management. We heard a little bit about that earlier. You shape the demand curve rather than a generation curve. Storage of any type, battery energy storage is probably most easily deployed. And here today, what we're focusing on is grid enhancement and interconnectors. So those three tools essentially make up the tools that support the energy transition and try to make it balanced. There is one more actually, and that is portfolio expansion. So instead of having all your eggs in one basket in PV or in wind, you've got to have a mix. So before I move into the specifics of transmission, I want to briefly talk about a second triangle which exists over and outside the first one, as known as the 3Ds. It's decentralization. We heard a little about that happening earlier, the several million injection points into the grid today rather than several thousand before. It's digitization, which is a very, very key part, and decarbonization. This right triangle is more the remit of utilities, system operators, developers, and large energy users. As a quick aside, roundabout, just to get the entire picture, and this is a model I've developed over a number of years, is that roundabout those two triangles, you have the three E's. So systems, buildings, infrastructure, transmission systems were all built and operated 20 years ago by engineers and reported on and managed. There was a shift, and that shift is very evident today, where it's generally economists. There's a movement to the second E, economists, which is also financiers. And generally, financiers make the decisions based on weighted average cost of capital, IRRs, etc., other financial metrics, without necessarily always paying sufficient attention to the engineering principles, which may have been left behind to an extent. The third E is the environmentalists. And there has been a movement over to that corner also, and not for the wrong reasons, of course, but social governance, environmental reporting, etc. The answer, of course, and I'll quickly move on, is that there needs to be a balance also in that outer third circle to achieve harmony. So to navigate that particular triangle, there's a number of questions need to be asked, and I'm not going to linger on this one, but no matter what type of an institution you are, whether you're a system owner, a system operator, regulator, government, commercial investor, multilateral bank, You need to ask yourself, what part of that system are you currently sitting on or in? What are the touch points and interdependencies, and there are many between those three shapes, and how each of those interactions and interdependencies affect where you're going to and where you want to be. So a little bit on transmission conductors. And I work for a company called CTC Global. We make a transmission conductor called it's called ACCC. There are many other competitors out there, and I'm not here to promote the virtues of one against the other. They're all part of the portfolio known as advanced grid conductors. Most of them are based on the same principles. So up on screen there, you will see on the left the old-fashioned steel cord transmission conductor. And it's obsolete technology. It's not patented, it's 110 years old. The new breed of conductors generally has some form of advanced carbon composite core, as you can see in the center of the image on the right. So what are the benefits of this conductor? It's 70% stronger, it's 50% lighter. You can pack a lot more aluminium in and around the core, which means you effectively double the capacity. So if you're talking about a reconductoring project, you take down the old conductor, recycle it, put up the new conductor, and without any additional right-of-way, without any need for additional planning, consents or permitting, you suddenly have 2,000 MVA capacity on that transmission line instead of 1,000 that you might have had up to then. So there's a quick case study from Alberta, and basically the long timelines involved in planning transmission infrastructure means that the situation often changes between conception, initiation, and final design and implementation. And in this particular case, the growing electrical injections and offtakes, energy consumption, meant that the project was under capacity before they even started to build it. So in this case, reconductor with the advanced grade conductors reduced the losses by 30% and double the capacity. Quick solution, which meant upgrading the line without any delays. There's a couple of quick examples there. I'm not going to go through them, but the whole new breed of advanced grid conductors, and I say new breed, but our particular product has 200,000 kilometers installed globally for 20 years. But the applications are many, and they're high temperature environments, they're new lines, interconnectors to new generation, backbone line capacity increase, etc. I'm just going to ask you to listen or watch a very short piece of video, and if we can play this in a moment, and we're just going to play the first 2 minutes of it. It's produced by ADB, and it depicts a project where in Bangladesh, ADB financed the implementation of advanced grid conductors, and you can see the benefits here in a moment.
The Dhaka and Western Zone Transmission Grid Expansion Project is ADB's latest endeavor in using advanced technologies to provide reliable and affordable energy to the greater Dhaka area and the Western Zone of Bangladesh, following the 2018 approved Southwest Transmission Grid Expansion Project. The Bangladeshi government further requested ADB to finance a $300 million loan from ADB's ordinary capital resources and an additional $200 million from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The People's Republic of China's Poverty Reduction and Regional Cooperation Fund will also add a $0.75 million grant. The project aims to modernize the energy infrastructure of the country by using two advanced technologies. Firstly, the project will fund the use of advanced conductors called Aluminum Conductor Composite Core, or ACCC, a high-temperature, low-sag HTLS power line conductor. Compared to conventional conductors, such as the Aluminum Conductor Steel Reinforced, the ACSR, these new high-temperature, low-sag conductors reduce thermal sag by being able to operate under much higher temperatures, allowing more electricity to be carried and promising less damage over time, as well as easily meeting clearance requirements between the line and the ground. The high-temperature, low-sag conductors use trapezoidal strands instead of round ones, so they carry more current and enable longer spans between support structures, reducing the need for infrastructure. Compared to the conventional ACSR conductor, the high-temperature, low-sag conductors are lighter and stronger, transfer more power with less energy loss, and lead to significant carbon dioxide emissions reductions. With these conductors, the grid becomes more resilient to extreme weather events like cyclones. These benefits should allow high-temperature, low-sag conductors to remain a leading technology in coming years. The expansion project is a good example of late development advantage for developing countries. Secondly, Bangladesh will now be looking into the use of drone technology to scour the grid network for damage, avoiding power failures that ultimately cost the country a lot of money. Today's drone technologies carry
Sorry. So finally, just like to say thank you for your attention. ADB financed that
the
particular
the state
project
of a
5 years
country's
ago.
power networks. Deploying drones to survey networks also means power transmissions do not need to be halted for
Having said
systems
that,
reviews.
I would
All
urge
of this means less damage to the
taxpayers
network
to
over time,
please
less
stop
time to inspect the
specifying. I
lines,
know
and
this is
most
something that plan
importantly,
to be has been
manpower.
with the transmission system owners in the various countries, but the old obsolete technology conductor is still being specified in most instances, and it's a little bit like financing projects which have incandescent lighting rather than LEDs, because this is basically, it's losing lots of percentages of energy in its inefficiency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. May I invite Henry Payer, IAEA, on the Continental Master Plan for Africa.
Thank you, Chair, and it's my pleasure to be sharing with you some of the work that the International Atomic Energy Agency has been doing with a number of partners over the last couple of years. So you may know the International Atomic Energy Agency as a nuclear energy agency within the UN system, but actually here I'm going to talk about our work in capacity building and energy planning. And applied to a big project that's been managed by the African Union Development Agency. So one of our mandates actually at the IAEA is to provide this capacity building and energy planning to member states and to allow them to take ownership of the tools and the capabilities to develop their own pathways and transition models. So I won't go into the details of the suite of tools that we have. Just we have one particular energy supply model called Message, and this one is the one that's been used in the development of the Continental Master Plan. Let me give you some background on the development of the Africa's Continental Master Plan. So Africa is a huge continent that has abundant natural resources, especially hydropower, but also fossil fuels, but they're not spatially matching where the demand centers are. So there's a great opportunity in connecting all the countries and regions in Africa to exploit these natural resources. There's expected increasing energy demand due to economic and social development and industrialization. Today we have 1.3 billion people, and the electricity demand is expected to more than triple by 2040. So there's this need to connect and plan the power generation and the transmission infrastructure at the scale of the continent. And we will see that this unleashes opportunities for the continent. This work is also in support of the development of the African single electricity market. So we go back to around 2019 when the project was launched under the African Union Development Agency. Uh, and there are 5 electricity pools in Africa that are the main, I would say, stakeholders in this project, and 2 modeling partners, 2 agencies that are supporting the electricity pools. One is the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the other one is the International Renewable Agency, IRENA. So the way the work was developed, there were a number of consultations, meetings, technical meetings with the modeling partners, so IAEA, IRENA, meeting with the electricity pools, the African Union Development Agency, and then the work started. So there's this particular energy supply model called SPLAT message. Message comes from IAEA. SPLAT is an interface that IRENA developed, and we provided training to the electricity pools with this set of tools. So in terms of scenarios that were considered, or different demand level scenarios, low growth, medium growth, and high growth, and different types or different levels of cross-border integration from the baseline, from the planned regional integration to the full regional integration, up to the full continental integration. And simulations were done for all the different possibilities, but I will refer only to 3 types of scenarios: the baseline, the regional, and the continental. So you can see where the demand will be, essentially in South Africa, but also Nigeria, Ethiopia, and also the North African part of the continent. And these are the different types of energy demand levels that were simulated. So in terms of results, you see the expansion of the generation technologies. So the big role for hydropower in Africa is really the main source of generation, but also wind and solar. We see natural gas playing also an important role as a transition fuel. The role of coal will be going down, and there's a role for geothermal, especially in Kenya, and nuclear in some countries. In the full continental integration scenario, there's also increased electricity trade to Europe and to the Middle East that was modeled. In terms of investment and total costs, what we have seen is that by developing a fully integrated continental system, that you have lower overall investment costs. So this is something that we heard this morning, that by integrating, by connecting countries, then at national level you optimize the investment in the different technologies by benefiting from maybe more affordable resources that are sitting across the border. And we also see that the system costs are lower when you consider a fully integrated system. In terms of CO2 emissions, maybe I should have mentioned that none of these scenarios are net zero transitions, but still you see that from a point of view of CO2 emissions, by having a fully integrated continental system, you lower the emissions compared to a less integrated system. So these are the existing and future interregional interconnections. So you see a large number of interconnections between Central Africa, which is the region in Africa which is extremely rich in hydropower resources, and the big demand centers, whether in Nigeria or in the South African power pool. These are the trade volumes that were modeled as well. Not much difference between the fully regional integrated system and the continental system, but there is more trade in the fully integrated continental system. So these are the snapshot of the cross-border interconnectors that are modeled up to 2040. There's I was mentioning the big hydro potential in Central Africa. There's a big hydro project called Grand Inga in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It has 3 stages. Inga 1 and Inga 2 are currently in operation. These dams were built in the 1970s and 80s, and there's a project, a very big project to build the 3rd step, Inga 3. Overall, this hydropower plant, if it were built, would represent something like 40 gigawatts of power. There's a huge interest from neighboring countries, in particular South Africa, to be connected to this big hydropower plant. And for these long distance lines carrying over 1 gigawatts, HVDC lines are considered. So I see the light is flashing. Just to conclude that this is a presentation of I would say, concrete energy planning and grid infrastructure work that's been done in collaboration between IEA, IRENA, and African Union and the power pools. Currently, the IEA is working with the different power pools, the South African power pools and the East Africa power pool to refine the study. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Henry. Next is Anna. She will talk about the Central Asian power system modeling.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. A very logical shift to my presentation. Thank you, Chair. I represent United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Something has happened with my clicker. Oh, thanks. It's one of the 5 regional commissions of the United Nations, and our geographical span is Europe, Central Asia, and Northern America. Why we are looking into Central Asian energy systems? Because they're among the most carbon intensive in the world, and since the world decarbonizes, it creates risks for the whole world to decarbonize. So together with the Stockholm Environment Institute and German government, because the project I will be talking about is financed by GIZ through German government, we have decided to look into regional energy systems of Central Asia, one regional system of Central Asia, and to compare the benefits of the regional approach to energy system versus national approach. The modeling toolkit is somewhat other than what Henri has presented. Stockholm Environment Institute has developed LEAP and WEAP systems, modeling tools, which they apply to many countries in particular. Embedded also water resources, which is of crucial importance for the region. Based on those tools, we developed four scenarios. First is national energy self-sufficiency scenario. It's a theoretical scenario which would mean only trade inside the country or no regional, intra-regional trade at all. Then regional connectivity, meaning that the countries inside the region trade power full connectivity. It's regional connectivity plus the possibility of the region to trade with third countries. And we also introduced unlimited connectivity, which means we added all possible transmission line capacities that system would that model would find cost efficient. And we assessed the benefits. And before I dig into details of our assessment, general conclusions are that the greenhouse gas emissions would be lower by 3% by 2050. Emissions from electricity production only, if the unlimited connectivity scenario would be applied. Also, unlimited connectivity creates 1.4 billion US dollars of annual savings in electricity production. And then, of course, it allows to better integrate renewables and to save on building unnecessary redundant capacity. We modeled final energy demand in Central Asia. It is seen that the demand is growing, especially in Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. And this shows how big the electricity sector would be by 2050. Of course, the role of gas and oil would still be big, and we also introduced to the model hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol as energy sources, and they would account for 6% of total energy demand by 2050. So assuming consistent climate policies, meaning that countries would abide by their NDCs, improved regional connectivity lowers greenhouse gas emissions from electricity production, and this is actually visualization of how it lowers. This is a picture of how would the savings look like if the unlimited or full connectivity scenarios are followed. Enhanced connectivity opens also big potential for Central Asian countries to trade power with third countries. And here we can see the projected flows to Iran, Russia, Afghanistan as well. However, our modeling exercise shows the most benefits are there for intra-regional trade, not for the region to be a partner for third countries. Here we can see this is difference between full connectivity scenario and national energy self-sufficiency scenario. On the right, we can see the rise of solar and wind power and the phasing out of fossil fuel gases, fossil fuel energy sources, because the full connectivity pushes away costly and non-efficient energy sources. Here is a similar projection for unlimited connectivity scenario. We also tried to plan, or not to plan, but to show possible options for additional transmission capacity between countries. And we can see here that in case of unlimited connectivity scenario, we have bigger possibilities of even inside bigger possibilities for energy trade inside Kazakhstan, between West Kazakhstan and North Kazakhstan, thanks to added transmission capacities in other parts of the region. Here we tried to look deeper into concrete flows between countries in 2030 or 2050 in case of full connectivity scenario, and later unlimited. Here we would advocate for multiple modes of electricity trading, be it by bidirectional export-oriented power purchase agreement or power wheeling, meaning that non-adjacent countries can actually trade power through power wheeling agreement through the territory of another country. We really hope at UNEC that these maps could serve to our member states or to the states of Central Asia in particular as a starting point to discuss possible projects of common interest. And of course, increased connectivity changes the investment structure. But what is interesting, the changes of connectivity doesn't change the total amount of investments very increasingly, but it rather changes the localization of those investments, meaning that if we go for maximum of connectivity, then some other countries would need to invest in the grids. The key findings we would skip because it's all about benefits, and I want just to mention about phase 2 of this modeling exercise, which we are working now with Stockholm Environment Institute on, and we presented preliminary results last week in Astana. Looking at the interconnectivity of energy systems in Central Asia, we would also add fossil fuel subsidies considerations, revenues from fossil fuel exports, to see how much money there is for connectivity investment, for example, and for decarbonization investments. We would also embed carbon prices, new carbon prices, and different spans of carbon prices, water availability considerations, and CBAM, as Central Asia is looking very much into exporting its manufactured goods to the European Union. These are our new scenarios, which we will be working on this year, and we will present the more advanced findings of the phase 2 of this project at UNEC Sustainable Energy Week in Geneva in September this year, then in Skopje, North Macedonia, in October this year, and then in Turkmenistan end of the year during our SPECA program. Thank you very much. I invite you to reach out if you're interested in this project.
Thank you. Next is Akbar from ASEAN Center for Energy.
Thank you. This is the last presentation from the panels. So I would like to give one of the important components of regional energy planning and grid integrations as a pathway to establish the more regional and also the multilateral power trade, which is the data sharings. So we take it our consideration by our experience in the Southeast Asia, the ASEAN regions. There's the pain point in doing the regional energy planning, which is sharing the data. Detailed data for regional planning could be some require quite efforts and resistance from the utility. So we like to present you on this. it's been a long journey for us for ASEAN to come up this stage on the implementation of the data sharing frameworks in order to advance the multilateral power trade in our regions. So before start, I'd like to introduce you to my organizations that I work for to give some of the context on our role to pursue the regional interconnections initiative through the ASEAN Power Grid. So what we do here is we are the institutions who represents the 10 ministries on energy in Southeast Asia. ACE, the sort of the ASEAN Center for Energy. We are the intergovernmental organizations in ASEAN's. We serve its member states in the think tank role to assist on the research, identifying the practical and specific solution on the policy, legal, regulatory frameworks, technology, innovations, and as well as the solution in financings. We also put our role in the energy data and knowledge hubs. We envision our organization to be the data hub and the knowledge repository for all the regional efforts in energy sectors, including in power trading for our multilateral power trading. And hence, we are, with the mandates of the ASEAN, we are now pursuing this initiative to implement the data sharing for the advancing the multilateral power trading. And lastly, as the catalyst, we provide the platform for strengthening the energy cooperation among our members through the policy advisory, best practice, capacity building, and also serve as the secretariat. For the last part, to solidify the energy cooperations in ASEAN, we are guided by the blueprint to support the implementation of the ASEAN's multilateral energy cooperations, which is called the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or short of APAEC. It has 7 programs areas. The first program being the ASEAN Power Grids, where we envision to have the regional grid integrations led by the specialized energy bodies named HAPWA. This is the specialized energy bodies consists of the 10 utilities from the 10 ASEAN member states. Yeah. Speaking of the ASEAN Power Grids, we are this initiative envision on the regional grid interconnection, where through the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan study, or called the AIMS, this is the 3rd edition of the AIMS, regional planning for the regional planning for grid interconnections. This study has already identified the 18 potential priorities interconnections, which 9 out of the 18 has been operated, but the existing 9 also required some of the modernizations, some of the increased capacity for the plannings. And besides the infrastructures, we also mind about the market development, where the member state can allow to trade their power across borders. For this, we have started the regional study for multilateral power market analysis as the phase 3 of the AIMS, a study where it focused on the component of the electricity market, such as the wheeling charges, institutional market model, regulatory frameworks, the grid codes, and also the technical standard and other elements. And as a starting on the context of what is the importance of the data sharing in advancing the multilateral power trades in ASEAN regions, currently these are a massive interest from the development partners that we engage through our organizations. And there are several dialogue partners approach us to support on this APG initiative because they see the quite benefit of the programs. But there is actually no benchmark for how far we were going from the initials in terms of the infrastructure development and how to quantify how much are the trading actually happens between countries in the context of the ASEAN power grids. Therefore, we try to get desktop research to the publicly available resources from the annual reports from the 6 individual utilities who have already participated in the electricity trading, where there is a clear data gap between the data collection process until the published data. So each utility reports power exchange data in various ways, as well as in the very different intervals. So it makes us hard for the APG stakeholders, the centers, and also the development partners to track the progress of the APG initiative and also to quantify the status of the APG. Okay. To summarize the current problem for data sharing, uh, there is a long delays for the availability of the data, lack of consistency in terms of the granularity. The data also dependent on the availability and the accuracy from the annual reports, where it's scattered in statistical categories, and also inconsistency could lead double counting for the power trading, and also the underutilized the regional database that has already established in the regions, which is sit within our organizations, the ASEAN Energy Database System. And the current practice reflect the reporting requirement of individual ASEAN utilities to focus on the data sharing with the power trading partners. So that the developing of the power exchange data sharing approach can be implemented if there is a commitment to sharing the APG from the APG stakeholders or the government, and also the cooperation between utilities and the regional entities such as ACE. Yeah. Therefore, we propose to standardizing the annual report. We start with the historical power data exchange because this is the easiest way, easiest data that can be gathered from the utilities. So it will make the data collection and data handling become more efficient because the templates are being standardized. So in terms of the benefits, this is our priority to increase the awareness from the ASEAN's APG stakeholders or institutional bodies to start seeing the benefits of the data sharings, to have some kind of the benchmark for tracking the trends, tracking the development progress, increase the confidence, the level of the confidence for the policymakers, regulators, utilities, as well as the investor to understand the power trade opportunities as well as the issues that may encounter during the progress. And also to have a better planning with the fit with the context from the previous speakers, a topic in the regional planning, the need of investment, and etc. So under the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, the blueprint that we have for the energy corporations, we have such a journey to emphasize the importance of the data sharing in advancing the regional integration efforts through the 5 years annual priorities that have been set by the ASEAN ministers. We conduct several consultation meeting, workshop activity with the IPG stakeholders to start on the ideation of developing some kind of data sharing frameworks and as well as the guideline for towards establishing the multilateral power trades. And through these efforts, we already established and agreed with the IPG stakeholders on the frameworks and data sharings, where you can see in this report, there are some key recommendations, where one of the key recommendation is to start with the first Pathfinder data sharing projects, where we start to sharing the annual historical data at the grid level first, and then later can be increased in such a level of detail for other purposes. And inside the framework, we sort of identify or propose some kind of step-by-step approach for data sharing guideline for the ASEAN member states. We identify the increase of efforts required in setting the temporal type of data, the granularity, the type of data itself, and also the data classifications from its steps, and we also should emphasis on the purpose of sharing for type of the data and categories of the data. We also need to promote the methods of the sharing data to ensure the data sharing are quite safe, and also identify the required support from the relevant stakeholders. For the first step, we propose to start sharing the data that are easily be shared, where the content of public data, such as the historical annual power exchange data. As the step one, the Pathfinder data sharing projects, the proposed methods is through the standardizing the data report formats, and also to configure the data sharing platforms with the objective is improving the awareness of the APG trends and developments to able to increase the confidence level from the stakeholders and the investor relating to the power trade opportunities and challenges in the ASEAN regions. And in relation to advancing the multilateral power trade, the data sharings on the step 2 of the data sharing frameworks, we realized that the data sharing could ensure the smoothness of the operation of the MPT, and also to initiate the development of the new power markets by providing the clarity on the demand patterns, the exchange of the reliabilities of the systems between the two different jurisdictions, and also to share the interconnection capacities. All these elements could reduce the uncertainties for the new power markets to be developed, and therefore there will be two different focus that are running in parallel. The first one is on the data sharing for the existing trades, and also for initiating the new multilateral power trade developments. Therefore, we also need to identify and define the type of data to be shared to catalyze the new markets development in defining the new platform for the new market power.
Soon.
Yeah. This is conclude our presentation. Thank you very much, and we look forward for discussions.
I request all the panelists to come on dais. Thank you. Thank you to all the presenters for the detailed presentation on each of the project. As I mentioned in the beginning, larger the control area, it's better to manage intermittency of renewable resources and any risk for that matter. In India, we developed the power system as regional power pools. We have 5 regions: north, south, west, east, and northeast. And early in the 1990s, we started interconnecting the regions through HVDC lines and later with AC lines. From 2014 onwards, the entire Indian grid operates in one frequency, 3.2 million square kilometer, 300 million plus customers, and 472 gigawatt of generation capacity. It's third largest grid in the world. And on the transmission side, we have very high capacity transmission system, very modern and efficient with excellent control centers. So anyway, I'm not going to go into the details of that. The main idea, what I wanted to tell you is that in 2012, the 4 regions were interconnected. Southern region was not interconnected. In July 2012, we had a massive disturbance, and 4 regions which were interconnected, all 4 of them gone. So there was a outage. Almost 600, 700 million people were in darkness for about 2 days. But in 2014, we connected southern region also into the Indian power system. And today we operate as one integrated grid. And we have inter-regional power transfer capacity of more than 120 gigawatt from one region to another region, total capacity. And thereafter, we never experienced any major failures. Last year in summer, there are two incidents when up to 8,000 megawatt of generation lost momentarily because of in the northern grid because of cloud movements, which were not predicted, which were not expected. Although we have very sophisticated weather prediction and estimation, renewable generation estimation tools, but it happened. But we were able to manage it because of the grid is much larger and there are surplus capacity in some region or the other. So my first question, I come to Ekaterina. This model which you have developed, has it been applied in any region or country? The integrated resource and resilience plan.
Yes, the short answer.
You can.
The short answer is yes. We've seen that many jurisdictions in different regions have are already looking into resource and the resilient part of the planning. We know that, for example, when we look into Europe, when we look at the TYNDP type of exercise or the ERA type of exercise, there is something that they are already considered. Also, in some other regions, the CEPAC and SAP, that also some aspects of this resilience part, which is kind of like the new kit of the block, because we have done integrated resource planning. Now we added an other R. So the short answer is yes, we have seen that. And then we see that, as I highlighted before, it will bring several benefits if we start implementing this here in the region.
Thank you. I'll come to Henry. I have some questions for you. So how does IAEA take the impact of climate change into account in the modeling? And you presented a work related to development of Africa's continental master plan. Is nuclear power an option that African countries are looking at?
Okay, thank you. So two parts to that question. On the impact of climate change, how do we take, do we take that into account? So the answer is yes. We take it into account both on the energy demand side, for example, with the increasing heat waves, there's an increased demand for cooling and so on, but also from the point of view of generation. Impact on hydropower generation is very significant. Today already several countries in Africa that are relying extensively on hydro have seen their generation fall significantly in the last couple of years because of extensive droughts. So that's taken into account in the modeling. In terms of nuclear, so actually in Africa today, we have one country that is operating a nuclear power plant. That's South Africa. It's a 1.8 gigawatt nuclear power plant. And Egypt is constructing a large nuclear power plant, 4 units, a total of 4.8 gigawatts. So these are either existing or under construction, so they're taken into account in the development of the Continental Master Plan. And there are a number of countries in Africa that are looking at nuclear power, in particular small modular reactors that was discussed this morning in the plenary session. Just for the audience to know, the IAEA identifies about 37 what we call newcomer countries that are expressing an interest in nuclear power and that are at different stages of embarking in a program. About half of those are in Africa. So there's a big interest in nuclear also in Africa.
Come to Thomas, how this advanced conductor can resolve the energy trilemma?
So thank you. It's back to this famous triangle we were looking at earlier.
So we're looking at how advanced conductors can help resolve and help balance the energy trilemma. First of all, I think we should bear in mind that there are 25,000 terawatt hours of electricity generated every year. And in fact, we heard earlier at the plenary opening session that 85% of the capacity that came on stream last year was from renewable energy. But just have a look at that 25,000 terawatt hour. There are about, if you look at technical losses, non-commercial, but technical losses on T&D, transmission systems globally, they're on average about 4%. You get them up to 8 and 10 and 12, but you get them as low as 1. So the average of 4% is huge. 4% of that 25,000 terawatt hour is lost. So if we can reduce, via the use of advanced grid conductors, reduce that loss from 4%, that average loss, to 3%, which is entirely achievable and quickly deployed, by the way, you're actually going to save 1% of the entire 25,000 terawatt hour, which is the equivalent of 250 terawatt hour, by reconductoring with advanced conductors. So it's all about, whilst maintaining the security of supply and resilience, reducing a term which I'm trying to get around a little bit more. We're all aware of LCOE, generation and system-wide term, describing the levelized cost of electricity, but the LCOET, that's the levelized cost of energy transmitted. So the cost of moving every electron or every megawatt hour through the system can be reduced with advanced grid conductors. I mean, to give an example, I come from Ireland, which is a small country with a total peak demand of about 6,000 megawatt. Off our shores, we have some of the highest wind resources in the entire world. We have about 70 gigawatt of recoverable, technically and commercially recoverable wind. Well, what does a nation state with an infrastructure that can transfer about 6 gigawatt do with 70 gigawatt or anything close to it? We cannot do it without enhanced transmission internally in our country and enhanced transmission interconnection to the other regions. So really, it's about ensuring that the cheapest form of energy can be dispatched at any one time, and whether that's from solar or wind or PV, whether it's from internally in individual countries or whether it's from the neighbouring countries, as we saw in the examples earlier with regional interconnectivity. It's really about keeping those costs down, enhancing the grid, and ensuring that security and resilience is kept strong. So, thank you.
You had mentioned about pre-conductoring. Could you explain that?
Pre-conductoring is essentially a concept whereby, if we look at and earlier we heard whereby electricity consumption is growing hugely, especially in certain parts of the world. And with data centers and additional EVs and distributed energy resources, we're going to see that growth certainly increase beyond 4% per year. So by the time transmission planners sit down and decide it's like building a road, let's say, from Manila to Batangas in the south, and if you design it out with three lanes either side, well, by the time transmission infrastructure is generally designed, planned, and built out, 6 to 10 years will have passed, and those 3 lanes will not necessarily accommodate future loads. So pre-conductoring is a concept whereby if you have a particular design capacity, we'll call it 2000 MVA, that you need or you forecast that you will need to transmit, don't just stop at 2000 MVA. Put in the high capacity conductors, build it out to 4000 MVA, and ensure that you're not left with egg on your chin, so to speak, in 10 years' time when your new infrastructure is under capacity.
Thank you. Earlier, ACCC conductor was made only in USA 2 years ago. CTC Global set up a large plant in India. So ACCC conductor is available in the region. So Anna, I come to you. What role energy connectivity can play in reducing emissions?
I will be short, and based on the slides I showed you today, it was clear that energy connectivity helps to plan the system in such a way that cheaper renewable sources are more prevail in the system, and therefore they phase out fossil fuel sources. And thus, at some of the scenarios we projected, the greenhouse gas emissions could be lower by 6% annually, which is a huge amount of emissions.
What's your further plans with the model and the studies?
We would like to have those models adopted, those modeling tools adopted by national governments. We will have several workshops with national stakeholders. And as I said, also, ideally, this would be a starting point to discuss some kind of master plan of the regional connectivity, or some concrete projects of cross-border transmission capacity. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll come to Akbar. There's a question from the audience which says every country has a different grid code compared to one another. So how do you take care of that and the protection standards when you interconnect between different countries?
Yeah, for ASEAN, I think this is different with the regional that have the clear regulatory for for their regions. In ASEAN, the power trading is actually in voluntary basis. So the countries that are willing to connect with each other, they should be no, there is no kind of grid codes for the regional, but there is should be a guideline for grid-to-grid interconnections for technical standard that should be harmonized from the two utilities. I think we start with the guideline first for the grid-to-grid interconnection, and then it's should be level up into the sub-regional guideline, and then once their markets assistant and more trading are happening in the region, then we can sort of having the regional grid codes while the regulatory body already established in the regions as well.
Thank you. There is a question from the audience which asking how Nepal can effectively benefit from its 100% hydroelectricity grid while participating in South Asia regional power trade because of its reliance on Indian power grid to export power from outside India. First of all, Nepal has huge hydro potential, but very little has been developed as of now. Despite various efforts over the past several decades, it didn't happen. I don't get into the details of that. But Nepal is already exporting to Bangladesh via India. Same with Bhutan is exporting to Bangladesh via India grid. So India, Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh are already interconnected, and we are doing power trading, and most of them come to India, and during winter months India give power back to Nepal because that river there goes dry. And there's a plan for interconnecting the Indian grid with Sri Lanka for last 25 years, but it has not happened yet because they always clubbed it with a bridge to be connected. So bridge never happens. Now everybody realize that bridge, whenever it comes, let the bridge come, the transmission line need to be done. There's a recently, a couple of months ago, a new agreement has been signed between India and Sri Lanka. We believe by end of the decade, Sri Lanka will be connected to India, which is good for both the countries. And 5 countries will be connected in the Asia grid. And sometime back in 1998, we mooted the idea, we means India Smart Grid Forum, we mooted the idea of interconnecting the regional grids. So there is a GCC grid, 6 countries in the Gulf cooperation countries, GCC grid. They are already doing power trading with the 6 of them. And India, as I said, 4 countries are already interconnected, and 6 or 7 countries in the ASEAN are interconnected. So connecting the GCC grid with India grid and India grid or a South Asia grid with ASEAN grid will give 5 hours of time difference from Singapore or Philippines to Saudi Arabia. 5 hours of time difference is there. That will be very, very advantageous to everybody in this era, evolving era with more and more solar power. So this is something which we hope someday will happen. And the ASEAN grid of 7 or 8 countries which are already interconnected is a good testimony that larger grids will come. But there are, many of you would have heard of GateCo plan of global energy interconnection and some other ISA plan of one sun, one world, one grid. So those are big $38 trillion programs. When it will happen, we don't know. That should also happen. But what we can do at marginal cost is interconnecting the regional grids, which will benefit everybody. We are out of time, but maybe one or two questions from the audience we'll be happy to take. That will cut into your tea break. Anybody? Yeah, please come to the mic and speak.
Hi, I'm Tanya Roberts-Davis. I'm with International Rivers Southeast Asia team. And I have a couple, one main question in two parts. One is that all of the speakers pointed towards the low cost and low carbon advantages of having regional grids. However, the connectivity will take billions of dollars, we know, and years to build out. So my one question is how, in terms of assumptions of your modeling, how much are you taking into account the lowering of costs in terms of and advances in storage for solar and wind so that you can keep power systems local or at least in a national context and not have to have the losses and costs of cross-border transmission? And secondly, in the presentations, it wasn't clear in terms of the environmental, social, and climate costs of the actual power, of actual life cycles of the power projects that will be needed to build out to supply the power to these grids. For instance, large-scale hydro, and I know the example of Inga was given. We know that will displace thousands of people and cause cross-border environmental damage. So it's not clear how that is being counted into the considerations that, and similarly in Asia, the Asian grid will also require build out of hydro. So it's not clear how that's being counted into the considerations of cost and losses and harms and damages to the environment and climate and communities as well. Thank you.
Who would like to take that? Anna?
Yes, I would gladly start answering from your second part. The social factor of our modeling is actually availability of energy sources. It's the main social indicator for us. And here we focus on LCOE of renewable sources. We also, I should mention that as UNEC, together with many other international partners, we are working on developing new metrics as an alternative to LCOE, which would entail the whole cost of the energy system, of regulation, dispatching, all those costs. And your first question, our modeling actually showed national self-sufficiency scenario versus full connectivity scenario. And our slide with investments showed that the level of the investments is not much higher in case of higher connectivity, but the localization of those investments would change. Since the region we've modeled is developing very fast, the energy consumption would grow significantly. The investments in transmission capacity will still be needed. Thanks.
Yeah. For your question regarding the total costs in the scenarios, the generation costs, the storage costs, the transmission costs were all taken into account. So you have the differences between a more or less integrated grid system that takes into account all these aspects. On the question you point out towards the the environmental impact of the different choices of generation. That was not done by that study because these are the plants that are currently in place or considered by the power pools. But I would say that that would be a necessary complementary study to be done on the different choices of generation, a full life cycle assessment of the different options.
You've been a wonderful audience, and you've been a wonderful audience. We'll close the session now and request everybody to come for a group photo.